Young and the Restless spoilers reveal that the upcoming confrontation between Daniel Romolotti and Nick Newman on The Young and the Restless promises to be a major highlight, taking the relationship between the characters into a dramatic new phase. The story is built around the growing tension between the two men as they argue over their loyalty and relationship with Sharon Newman. Daniel seems to have a problem with Nick's devotion to Sharon, especially considering all the major changes in her story. With his sharp and insightful nature, Daniel may feel that Nick is placing too much trust in Sharon without looking closely at the details. This suspicion will lead Daniel to decide to confront Nick, forcing him to face things that Nick may not have realized. During this conversation, Daniel may try to push Nick to admit what he missed when he was with Sharon. Daniel wants Nick to understand why Sharon's new defense is credible, which could open up a deeper discussion between them. Nick, in his sincerity, could confess that Sharon's hypnosis sessions were the reason she remembered there was a third person in the apartment the night of the incident. This information would shock Daniel, but he would not accept it easily. Daniel could be skeptical about the reliability of hypnotic memories. He could suspect that Nick, out of affection for Sharon, was trying to justify her innocence. The conversation could turn to Daniel questioning whether Nick was looking at Sharon objectively, or simply being blinded by his emotions. Nick, on the other hand, could counter with how well Daniel knew Sharon. He could emphasize that Sharon could never have gotten rid of Heather, something Daniel certainly knew. Nick could urge Daniel to accept that someone else was responsible for the event, not Sharon. This argument from Nick would pose a major challenge to Daniel's perspective, forcing him to reconsider his thinking. Meanwhile, other developments are also brewing as Billy Abbott joins in on the plan to get revenge on Victor Newman. Billy is not afraid to offer Phyllis Summers some tempting offers. With his sharp persuasive skills, Billy will have an offer that Phyllis will find hard to refuse. He could ask Phyllis to join his alliance, arguing that they need to join forces to deal with Victor, who has caused so much pain to both of them. Billy's presence in this story not only adds to the complexity, but also puts Phyllis in a situation where she has to weigh loyalty against opportunity. Phyllis Summers, with her instinct to protect herself and her family, could be drawn into this plan. Whether or not she agrees to participate, however, will depend on Billy convincing her that this is the right path. Billy can emphasize that this is not just about revenge, but also a chance to regain control of their lives, something Phyllis has been craving after recent events. This story not only creates tension between Daniel and Nick, but also expands the relationships between the other characters, pushing them into complex and challenging situations. Viewers will witness sharp exchanges, tense mind games, and deep emotional moments, highlighting the ingenuity in character development and storylines on The Young and the Restless. There are fierce conflicts, but the battle between Daniel Romolotti and Nick Newman promises to bring viewers to an unprecedented dramatic climax. Both men are devoted and loyal, but when the conflict reaches Sharon Newman, a woman struggling to protect her innocence, the line between right and wrong becomes increasingly blurred. The story begins when Daniel feels uncomfortable with Nick Newman's unwavering devotion to Sharon Newman, especially when considering the drastic changes to Sharon's story. Lost memories recovered through hypnosis sessions open up a new possibility: a third person may have been present at the apartment that fateful night. However, for Daniel, this is not enough to prove Sharon's innocence. When confronting Nick, Daniel does not hesitate to press him to admit what has been left out of the story. Can't you see that Sharon may be being manipulated? Who else was in the apartment that day? Don't you wonder if this is really believable? Daniel asked, his eyes filled with doubt. Nick, who had always been on Sharon's side, retorted strongly, "Daniel, I know Sharon better than anyone. She would never hurt Heather. You may not want to accept this, but you are ignoring the obvious fact that someone else orchestrated everything." This heated debate not only clarified the differences in their views, but also opened up the dark corners of each character's loyalties. Meanwhile, another plot was brewing. Billy Abbott, who had always had a grudge against Victor Newman, approached Phyllis Summers with an irresistible offer. Phyllis, who was looking for an opportunity to prove her worth and resolve her personal conflicts, began to consider Billy's invitation to join the Revenge Alliance. "Phyllis, you know Victor is not someone to be taken down easily. But with your help, we can do it," Billy whispered with a knowing smile. Phyllis hesitated. She knew that if she accepted, she would be playing a dangerous game, but at the same time, it was also an opportunity for her to regain power and influence. Back with Daniel, He couldn't help but question the source of the new information brought by hypnosis. Are we really going to believe this shaky science? He said to Nick. Or is this just Sharon's way of justifying herself? I don't deny that Sharon could have been a victim, but why do you believe so completely? Nick, though firm in his stance, was shaken by Daniel's words. He admitted that it was the hypnosis sessions that helped Sharon remember the presence of the third person, but was this really reliable? Daniel, you can be skeptical, but I can't. Sharon doesn't deserve all these accusations. If you really want to know the truth, then look for evidence, not just suspicion, Nick replies, his eyes flashing with determination. As the war between Daniel and Nick continues to escalate, the truth seems to remain out of reach for all. Sharon, in her efforts to free herself, seems to be drawn into more complex conspiracies. Billy and Phyllis, with their plot against Victor, may create another major storm in Genoa City. The big questions remain unanswered. Who was really behind the incident at the apartment that night? Can Sharon regain her honor, or will she be cast into the shadows forever? And most importantly, where will the conflict between Daniel and Nick lead? Fractured relationships, tested loyalties, and hidden conspiracies promise to take the story to a whole new level. With each step of the characters, the audience will be drawn into a vortex of drama, where no one can predict what will happen. The battle between Daniel and Nick is not only a struggle between two individuals but also a symbol of the confrontation between loyalty and truth, between emotion and reason. Meanwhile, the overlapping conspiracies and relationships in Genoa City promise to bring unexpected twists, making the audience unable to take their eyes off. However, Sharon also understands that not everyone is on her side. Daniel may be suspicious, but the complex plots of Billy and Phyllis are pushing the story in a different direction. Sharon not only has to face suspicions, but also larger forces that are secretly determining her fate. Is entering a new dramatic chapter, and the only thing we can be sure of is, no one in this story will escape the influence of the conflicts and conspiracies that are gradually revealed. The Young and the Restless is facing a new chapter full of surprises, and viewers will not be able to take their eyes off the fight for justice and truth between attractive characters.